You saw the title. You know what this video is about. Hello everyone, this is Noodle, and the Mimosa Confessions Volume 2 just dropped like a month ago. And since I made a video on it last time talking about Volume 1 and how much I really enjoyed the series, I thought it'd be really nice if we could just, if I could take some time to basically just review each of the volumes as it comes out. And it just so happened that when I released, my Volume 1 video, Volume 2 was very shortly coming out, so great timing for me, I guess. I'm not exactly sure where to start from here, but I'm gonna spend the first brief period talking about the first volume, and don't worry, I'll make this a quick recap. I'm not gonna waste your time. Just to quickly recap on the story of FNAF. No, that's not what I meant to say. Volume 1 focuses on Sakuma and his childhood friend Ushio, who comes out as a girl, and the main bulk of the story revolves around the reactions to Ushio coming out and what Sakuma thinks about it and how he reacts to it, how he overcomes his feelings and, you know, thoughts on it and such. Along the way, Sakuma meets a girl named Natsuki who they all become friends with, and they sort of, Sakuma, Ushio, and Natsuki become a sort of friend group. A large part of the book is spent on how students casually just react to it, along with, you know, people who are, you know, for it, against it. We get some characters who are verbally against it, like Nishizono, who doesn't take it well, calls it bad, rejects it, and verbally, you know, abuses Ushio for it, including like, you know, messages on the board. It's soon revealed that in the friend group, Sakuma, Ushio, Natsuki has a crush on Ushio, while Sakuma has a crush on Natsuki. But then we get the another biggest bombshell is that Ushio has a crush on Sakuma. And so it's when Ushio does reveal that she does have a crush on Sakuma, Sakuma doesn't exactly give a response. He just kind of leaves her, so essentially, no wait, no pause. Left on red. There you go. Left on red. That's a better interpretation. I'm sorry. That concludes chapter 1 of the volume 1. And so once we reach into volume 2, we get introduced to a new character, Sera. Sera is a transfer student from Tokyo who comes from a more progressive mindset when it comes to someone like Ushio, and immediately goes for her. He doesn't give a shizzle, you know. You were born a dude. I don't give a shit. You identify as girl? You identify as girl? I want you. And so Ushio offers a proposition to Sera. If Sera comes in first place on the exams, Ushio will date him. And immediately, Natsuki and Sakuma don't want to let Sera win. Natsuki doesn't like Sera because she wants to protect Ushio, and Sakuma's reason is a bit complicated. As the story goes along and Sakuma slowly realizes who Sera really is, and he's kind of a fucking douchebag. He's kind of playboy, dates multiple girls at the same time, but he's also very progressive in certain aspects of society, and Sakuma isn't exactly down with it. But during the exams, Sakuma pushes himself to beat Sera on the exams, overcomes his hatred of Sera, realizing that he's similar to Nishizono, who rejected and never opened like her mind to, you know, or even consider other person's thoughts when, you know, they start bringing up their, like, you know, what their vision and like, and how they feel about life, and being able to at least, you know, understand it and not just immediately go like, gross. And Sakuma actually gets first place in the exam, so Sera is not dating Ushio. But then he looks at Sera, and Sera talks to him, and he realizes he still hates Sera. Not because of ideals or values, but because he's an asshole. Ushio runs away, and Sakuma finds Ushio, and Ushio rightfully gets angry at Sakuma because 1, she was given no answer on a confession, and 2, she tried to move on with the most mid guy ever, and then 3, Sakuma jumps in to block Sera. Like, bro, what the fuck? I'd be angry too. And it's like, you don't give me an anti-confession, so I try to move on, but then you prevent that? Hold the fuck up. Sakuma finally formally rejects Ushio's confession, but still wants to be Ushio's friend, as he wants to protect her. He wants to always be there for her, even if she doesn't want him. He promises to always be the best person for her, and Ushio understandably starts crying. But then, in the midst of the scene, she kisses Sakuma. Sakuma's stunned. Ushio immediately apologizes, not knowing what she did. In the outskirts of the classroom they were in, Natsuki saw them and is very fucking confused. That's a quick rundown of volume 1. Hopefully I didn't spend too much time on it, but I just want to talk about quick praises of volume 1 just before we get into it. Obviously Ushio's transition, it's incredibly realistic. The reactions, the bigotry regarding Ushio, and how Ushio realized she was a girl and how she slowly transitions. There's a lot of pages detailing basically the time that she actually thought she was a girl. It's really detailed, it's really beautiful. It takes up a sizable portion as well, so thank goodness for that. Another praise I have is Sakuma seeing Ushio as a girl, which is a whole character arc on its own, the entire story. The thing is, he slowly starts falling in love with her. If you guys remember, in volume 1, I mentioned the bandage scene where Ushio bandaged Sakuma, and Sakuma said, hey, that's pretty girly. And Ushio is very happy with that statement, but Sakuma feels something. And the feeling is that if only Ushio was born a girl, then maybe I might have fallen in love with her. And it's that clear moment where Sakuma has a bit of conflict with like sex and gender, because he does see Ushio as a girl, but that line between sex and gender is just a bit too blurry that he couldn't really fully articulate those feelings. It continues growing more and more as he starts seeing her more as a girl, and it leads up to the kiss, where I still really love this scene, but I don't exactly remember where it is, but it basically goes about how Sakuma when Sakuma gets kissed by Ushio, Sakuma can only describe it as one word: woman. And that reaches a peak of the character arc where he finally sees Ushio as a girl in some way. And now we can dive into Volume 2! Similar to the structure I did for Volume 1 video, I'm going to talk about things that I liked. I'll talk about the plot when it's needed, but the last thing I need is like making this video like one of those video essay YouTubers where they play video games, they just talk about the entire game story while just like putting their commentary in and such, and I don't want to do that because one, it's not my style personally, and two, that makes this video way too long. So let's talk about the things that I liked and then the things that I didn't like. Let me take these headphones off. My goodness. Okay, okay, my voice was getting so. The first thing I want to talk about is the dynamic between the group. Ushio, Sakuma, and Natsuki. Three Musketeers, the group of three, whatever you want to call them. I just want to do a formal apology to any Mimosa Confession fans out there, all three of you. I apologize for shafting Natsuki so hard. In the Volume 1 book, I don't remember. If you look in the script maybe, and the subtitles, I only mentioned like a few times, and I heavily regret doing that because she is important to the story, and after rereading this volume and rereading a bit of Volume 1, you can see how more important she is. On Volume 1, she didn't really get to really do much in a sense, but she was there, and in Volume 2, she gets a lot more focus and a lot more love in this, and expands on a level I didn't think was exactly possible. But the first thing I want to talk about in the dynamic between the group is that they all care for each other to the point that they're willing to self-sabotage each other just to make each other happy. And the first quarter of the book is dedicated to Free slowly reconnecting after the incident where the kiss happened, and they've been ignoring it for the longest time, and it does drag on for a bit rereading it, but it does help to reintroduce these character stuffs in case we sort of forgot. And it says to mention the aquarium scene. So the aquarium scene happens when they finally reconnect. They're all hanging out now, and there's a bit of tension here and there. Everyone has their own priority here. Sakuma's like, I got resolve stuff, make things not awkward. But Ushio and Natsuki have been mind their own. Ushio's like, okay, so I know Sakuma likes Natsuki because in Volume 1, I figured that out. I'm gonna be a wingman for Sakuma and try to hook him up with Natsuki, even though I have a crush on Sakuma, so kind of sucks on my end. And Natsuki's like, I just saw Sakuma and Ushio kiss, and so I'm gonna be rooting for them, even though I sort of have a crush on Ushio, or really like her at least. I'm also fucking myself over. That's just a small example, but it happens a lot more times in the book where all these characters' thoughts affect each other, all their actions affect each other, and one thing I desperately did not talk about in the original is how much, if you remove one of the characters, a butterfly effect would happen, where certain characters, or if they aren't there, certain things won't happen. And it's more heavily shown in this book, especially with characters that I thought I sidelined, like Natsuki, because she is a lot more important than I gave her credit for. Their trio energy really makes up all most confessions, and I really do like that. I don't think that story would have been bad if it was just, for example, Sakuma and Ushio, but having another character that serves to provide a different sort of view to it is interesting. It makes it more complex, and that's one thing I have to really applaud the author for both for using in a narrative way to showcase different viewpoints in a sense. That's what I'm trying to get at, because this whole book is about viewpoints. The whole series is about viewpoints, just from the topic of, transgender alone. I do like the interesting ways that the author uses all these characters to put a different viewpoint, like those who know, those who don't know. And yeah, events do not fall in place without them. Even small minor characters that in the book that don't really get much screen time, their words affect the story, either be affecting Ushio or affecting small little bits that linger in characters' heads. And the one thing I can applaud and both slightly criticize Volume 2 for is that it's more character driven. And in the story, all these 3 characters that were usually all together in volume 1, in this book they get separated a lot more, and we get to see how their bond just twinged during the book and how each of them act independently compared to in the first book where they were sort of together as a team, even though you know they were separate on different occasions, but it felt more they were more united in that book. But this one, conflict happens and they are a bit on their own, and so each of these characters get to shine as a result. It allows each of these characters, Sakuma, Natsuki, and Ushio, to shine their own ways and have their own character moments. The only con is that due to their conflict with their relationship and such, their bond and relationship at the end of the book is almost exactly the same as it was during volume 1/volume 2, and it's not exactly the same, but in terms of like the circumstances at the stance they have, they're back to stage 0 before, you know, the whole kiss happened. And people can argue about that. I'm sure I will probably maybe get like one argument about that, which we can debate about that. But yeah, now I talk about the dynamic group, I'm going to talk about the actual characters, starting with Natsuki, because Natsuki's really good. So starting with Natsuki, if you remember, I talked about how each of these characters affect each other and their growth and such, and you can notice in everyone, but it's also especially noticeable in Natsuki with how more nuanced she gets. Because in the volume 1, she was not to say she was naive, but she was the typical schoolgirl, energetic schoolgirl who always tries her best to make everyone happy, including, you know, people who are a bit more antagonistic like Nishizono and such, who's a bitch. Yeah, she was always energetic and tried to make everyone happy, and we get to see a different side of her, and her not true thoughts in a sense, because to imply that what she's showing is like a facade or something like that. No, everyone has complicated emotions. She takes a more proactive role in this volume specifically, as she pushes herself into new roles that she can't keep being the way I am. It gives her more attention as she actually directly pushes herself onto taking on new roles, and the reason why she gives for that is because of the other characters, Sakuma and Ushio, which we're gonna say right now. Because basically, the reason why she joined the committee is because that after the kiss, she felt sort of left behind in a sense. Witnessing Ushio kiss Sakuma and being in shock and all about that, she realized something. Over the course of volume 1, Natsuki constantly relied on Sakuma and others to get the hard work done for her. And you know, like I mentioned earlier, Sakuma coming in first place for the exams, also Natsuki's idea. It seemed that, and this is directly stated in the book, so I'm just giving my personal thoughts on it, but I feel like after Natsuki witnessed Ushio and Sakuma kissing, she felt sort of left behind, because Natsuki likes Ushio, and they make it a bit, you know, be like, do I, since Ushio came out as a girl? Am I a lesbian? The direct text that talks about, you know, they're all gonna learn to grow and improve, I just stay the same and get left behind. I literally couldn't get that thought on my head for pretty much all vacation. But yeah, basically I just want to learn how to grow too, and prove myself that I've also got what it takes to do something great on my own, if that makes sense. And the weird thing, like the thing that always stuck out to me is that she mentioned Ushio and Sakuma kissing. And to me, what that told me, at least, when I say she gets left behind, I mean left behind as in people are growing without me, you know? Like I just saw 2 of my friends just kissed. Like are they already at that level? When this happened, you know, when they get that close, and you know, it really makes you rethink time in a sense. You'd be like, what the fuck have I been doing with my life? You know, stuff like that. And I've had those revelations too. It wasn't exactly because of kiss, but there's always those moments where you're like, where something happens that makes you completely rethink time and how you've been prioritizing it. And when Natsuki says that, I'm like, wait, have they been like using their time more efficiently than I am and such like that? It just also combines together to make a sort of shit, I need to lock in, you know, something like that, you know. It's a new goal for her at least, and it makes her more nuanced in a sense. I love complex characters. You can still be the energetic, happy go, but you know that could be always top layer. There's always more layers to a character, and you know, it doesn't be like a dark backstory or some shit like that. No, it doesn't need to be that way. I'm always a fan of just elaborating details, you know, just giving characters little moments. I like moments that you can really really show what a character's like. That sounds stupid. You can tell I don't review books that often or review anything that often. Like I said, she pushes them to new roles. She directly goes onto a new path, unknown path, because she wants to grow. And in volume 1, her growth in volume 1 was growing up to be more supportive while keeping her energetic attitude and learning how to navigate through conflict because of her friendship with Ushio and how it conflict with Nishizono and such. Volume 2 takes a bit of a twist because the conflict that happens in the book isn't because of someone else like Nishizono and such. It's because of her. Combined with other things that happen in the book, because I'm gonna mention right now, because Natsuki tries to go for her own path, like I mentioned earlier, and she fails. She gets student council, and she does not do a good job at, organizing stuff. She does not do a good job at planning stuff, and ultimately she gets dogged on by, a bunch of the class people like, bro, you fucking suck at your job, bro. When you read the reason why she wanted to grow to be more independent, she didn't want to be left behind. It really gives off that feeling that, she's gonna do something. And when those stuff happens that makes her all fuck up and being like, shit, did I rush it? And that's something I think we can all agree with. We can see other people doing so well in life and such, and think that we need to up our pace and such. And so sometimes we start upping a bit too fast, and we fucking trip and fall and stuff like that. And we aren't exactly, when we're in that sort of state where we're constantly already upping our game, we don't exactly know what's normal for our pace, because we're looking at others while we're doing it. And so if they're upping the pace, shouldn't I up the pace? And yeah, it just sucks seeing Natsuki sort of fail like that. And what it spawns from it, though, is a really good conversation with Sakuma, and how both of them fuck up in a way, because Sakuma also fucks up later in the story, and oh wow, they have a little bonding moment because of that. I mean, at the end of the story, things turn out okay, or decent at least, but those moments with Natsuki, it still made her a lot more engaging in a way. And I don't mean that in a bad way that, in volume 1 she wasn't engaging, but her time that she spent in this book regarding on her moments and how she felt is very, very good, and I really do like that, and creates for a nice subplot that happens in the book. And remember when I said about how the author introduces a bunch of characters to show different viewpoints and such? Natsuki also serves that purpose of showing a different viewpoint when she talks about what is love. And it's a question that Natsuki asks Sakuma, and Sakuma's like, that's a good question. Because, if you ask like 10 or 100 people, they probably all have different answers. You're like, my life, stuff like that. And it's always different in a sense. And the fact that Natsuki questions Sakuma about it is really interesting given her relationship with Ushio. And she has conflicting feelings about Ushio. She wants to protect her, but also, is it romantic? Is it platonic? And stuff like that. And it's a little thing. It's really hard to talk about Natsuki and other characters for that matter, because, we're in the first person perspective. We don't get to look inside of Natsuki's perspective and see what she's feeling like. We all have it from Sakuma. So anything that Sakuma notices, we notice as well. So if there's something that Sakuma doesn't really notice, then it doesn't really get pointed out in the text unless there's a little brief little snippet that we can use to be like, maybe she thinks of that way. And that's what I love about writing, and just emotions in general. There's so much interpretation you can take from just a single line or just single description. And the thing regarding a bit more about Natsuki's feelings on Ushio is that she definitely understands Ushio in a way, not in the transgender way, but she sees things and gets reminded of Ushio. It's basically a metaphor using fish to describe Ushio. You know the thing about tuna, right? She asks as she watched it go by. Not sure. What thing? I replied. Apparently they can never stop swimming, or else they can't breathe. Oh yeah, so I've heard. You think that means they literally never stop swimming from the moment you're born? Wonder what it'd feel like, going your whole life like that, never being able to stop. Yeah, sounds like it would be pretty inconvenient, I said. Imagine you see some cool shiny treasure or whatever on the ocean floor, but you can't even stop to take a look. Imagine you see some cool shiny treasure or whatever on the ocean floor, but you can't even stop to take a closer look. Oh man, that's a really good point, yeah. There was so much awe in her voice. You would have thought I'd just make a very astute and meaningful observation. In reality, I'd just been talking out my ass, so I felt a little bit bad when she actually took it very seriously. Well, I'm sure it doesn't feel like much of an inconvenience to them though. I mean, it's not like they ever known anything different. So to them, it's just probably the norm. You don't think they get jealous from looking at all the other types of fish that can stop whenever they want? I don't know, it'd be something to do I guess, but others probably don't care. Alright, so there are different types of fish that migrate like birds actually. Basically, any sort of fish that moves to another part of the ocean in search of food, or once it reaches a certain point of maturity, we refer to it as a migratory fish. The Pacific bluefin tuna is one example. Those things will spend months crossing the entire Pacific Ocean to reach their spawning grounds. Unfortunately, most of these fish are pretty poor swimmers, so they end up dying after being unable to acclimate to whatever it is they end up. Wait, they just die? Yeah, either because their bodies can't adapt to the colder water, or because they get targeted by predators in a weakened state. Wow, that's kind of sad to think about. Wait, you said most of them die, right? That means some of them must survive, right? What do you think happens to them? Well, they probably start reproducing in their new environment, and then, over the course of several generations, I assume, they genetically adapted better suited to it. For to be clear, when I said most, that was probably a huge understatement. Getting swept away from your natural habitat to somewhere far away is pretty much a death sentence for virtually any fish. You can maybe equate it to like getting in a tragic car accident or something. That bad, huh? That conversation died there. I glanced at Hoshihara out of the corner of my eye and noticed a hue of sorrow painted across her expression. Her walking pace had slowed a little bit too. I wondered why. But you know, Hoshihara began, coming to a sudden stop. No what? I said, stopping dead in my tracks as well. I feel like there's also gotta be some fish who head out into new and different parts of the ocean of their own free will. And not just because they get swept up by the current. Like, because they find their current environment too harsh to live in. Or they're just curious to see what else is out there. Even when they know they can't swim to save their lives. I don't know. Maybe they just feel like there's somewhere they need to go. Some change they need to make, even if it kills them. I feel like there might be some fish that just might be out there. And yeah, those two scenes that I talked about, you can obviously tell they reference Ushio in a lot of ways regarding about, in terms of how Natsuki describes it, fish that are predetermined to go on one path, or fish that only know a certain norm, and some feel jealous that maybe they're not on that norm in a sense. And you can obviously see how Ushio can be put into that sort of metaphor with the fish. It really shows how much she really thinks of Ushio, or like not in like an obsession way, but more so she sort of understands Ushio's situation, sort of really, like uses fish to represent that in a way. And it's not really a big thing, but like I said, it's always those moments that provide so much depth. Yeah, that's Natsuki. Natsuki got a lot more character growth in here and a lot more attention, and it's an interesting thing because in order for me to actually get engaged with character, you have to both give them attention to it and give me a reason why they need attention. And this book does a really nice job. Look at Natsuki. This is the last time you're gonna see her because we're moving on to Sakuma now. So Sakuma is still at the beginning of the book, at least. Sakuma is still very much the naive, nice guy that wants to be nice to everyone. Poor Ushio. Regarding the beginning of the book, he's still in the middle of a conflict between Ushio and Natsuki and how both of them feel toward each other, because he likes Natsuki, but... And one thing that I've always appreciated about Sakuma, and it's mostly because that we look into his perspective of things, is how he's smart, he's kind of intelligent, but he's not that intelligent. Because when you're in the first person view, you are engaged with this person completely. You are that person. When you're reading that book, you're seeing everything through his eyes. So we get to see both his strengths and how he's able to interpret a lot of things, and also his faults when he's not able to recognize certain things, or when he doesn't, or when lack of mention of anything. We get to see a lot more of he can read pretty well, especially Ushio, and the times when he doesn't makes it more important as he starts. Those are moments where he starts to have revelations with his mindset being like, why can't I understand Ushio, and the actions he takes because of that. And one thing I really like that this book talks about more of Sakuma specifically is how he expresses his thoughts, because he kind of expresses his thoughts in weird ways. He started talking about fish to Natsuki, so that's a good starting point. But also, in volume 1, he tried to make a forgiveness deal to Ushio after seeing her in a schoolgirl outfit by showing him his old middle school novel, and that sort of trend of doing things in an odd way continues in this book, and it starts to get to a point where it actually causes conflict. Around chapter 4, there's a conflict between Ushio, Sakuma, and Natsuki at a dinner scene, and the conflict regards around Ushio's decision to be Juliet in the Romeo and Juliet school play, which I have not mentioned yet. Keep down your bullet point, whatever you call it. Ushio didn't exactly want to be Juliet, and so she sort of hid those feelings until the dinner table, where she just completely reveals that, yeah, sorry Natsuki, you pressuring me to be Juliet, maybe want to be Juliet, but I did not want to be Juliet. Peace out. And then they leave and such. And so obviously Natsuki's like, I fucked up, which refers to back when I said Natsuki keeps fucking up. And Sakuma doesn't understand why Ushio did this. And originally he takes it as Ushio trying to set him up with Natsuki by pushing herself away from them so he can, bond together, which they actually do, by the way. The one thing that Ushio actually says to Sakuma is, you wouldn't understand Sakuma. And Sakuma's like, damn right I wouldn't. And this causes the scene that I talked about where Natsuki and Sakuma talk, that I mentioned in the Natsuki segment, because here it's made a lot more personal in a sense for both Sakuma and Natsuki. Both of them have made mistakes. It's the reason why I keep prefacing that Natsuki is important to the story, because of the impact she has on Sakuma. The fact that they're able to communicate about it, and Sakuma doesn't just spiral in his head with all the thoughts, because Sakuma has a bit of a, not mental breakdown, but he has a lot more mental revelation in a sense because of his actions, and it's only because the result of him talking with Natsuki and other characters that he's able to fully articulate his feelings. Because the one thing that can make us all biased and such is limiting ourselves to our own perspective and such. If we just only listen to ourselves, we're never gonna grow. We're never gonna, figure out if there are problems with us, we won't even know what it is. So being able to have people around us that are able to not essentially disagree, but challenge our thoughts, or, be able to provide a different perspective, it's good. I fucked up there. But it's like going on a certain line path, and having other people to provide their perspectives provides on different pathways you can go by. Natsuki fills that role a lot when they have that conversation, talk about how much they fuck up. I keep making mistakes. And Sakuma's like, fuck dude, I keep making mistakes as well. We're real. Yeah. And after the conflict where Sakuma, Ushio, and Natsuki have a conflict, they basically don't talk for a while. Sakuma and Natsuki do, but Sakuma and Ushio, they don't. And it caused a bit of a rift between them two because, well, first they were childhood friends, and for a majority of the book, they were very, very close and such. And, it takes a toll on Sakuma's health as he tries to figure out, how to resolve the conflict and such. And it causes him to take actions that aren't actually good and push Ushio further away from him. Oh, in one of the scenes, Sakuma tries to call out Ushio, say that she's lying and such, and that, the real Ushio would never do this. And Ushio rightfully is like, the fuck you say to me? I don't know, if anyone did that shit with me, I'd also be incredibly pissed off, especially in the context of the Mimosa confessions. Saying that the real version of someone is probably one of the most disrespectful things to say to someone. He actually mentioned in the book that he became Nishizono in a way again, pushing Ushio into a categorized box to understand her, trying to perceive her in the way that you want to see her as without actually acknowledging what she actually is. And surprisingly, it's actually Sera. Sera from the volume 1, the douchebag, the playboy shit. Yeah, he's in this book. He's very good. Wait till my segment on him happens. But Sera helps realize his faults and how biased his viewpoint is. Sera does that a lot. He did that in volume 1, and he does it especially a lot in volume 2. Sera serves as I'm gonna talk about it soon, but Sera serves as a very beautiful neutral balance. He comes from a more progressive mindset, so although he doesn't exactly empathize with Ushio, being transgender and such, he does understand. It's the fact that he does understand that makes him on a league far above Ushio and Natsuki. Sera essentially breaks apart Sakuma's mindset by not tricking him in a sense, but more so doing a gotcha moment at him when he's like, for example, well, if you insist, okay, look at it this way. You're a guy, right, Sakuma? Yeah. And you like girls, right? What about it? Well, there you go. That's privilege for you. Pardon? I don't see what you mean. That's not privilege. That's just The moment the words left my lips, I got a sinking feeling in my stomach like I just accidentally stepped into a snare. Right you are. It's perfectly normal. Sera leaned to get a better look in my face, like a giddy hunter peeking in to see what foolish prey had fallen into his trap. He wore a twisted smile. So what you're saying is, Ushio isn't normal then. And that's why I can tell there'll forever be a disconnect between you and her. I didn't mean it in the good or bad way I said. Don't read so much into it. But it's these exact little thoughtless slips of the tongue that so often reveal how a person truly feels deep down. Or so I heard some dude in a snazzy suit say in a talk show once. In any case, it's not even a matter of good or bad, just that what you consider normal is different from Ushio's normal. And if you don't even see the world the same way that someone else does, it's going to be pretty damn hard for you to understand them on a deeper level. That's why I don't think you guys ever be able to mesh well as friends or connect with her. Honestly, best thing Ushio could do for herself is get the hell out of this little podunk town ASAP and move somewhere where she can find a lot more people like her. Just like polar bears live in the Arctic and camels live in the desert, everyone's got an environment they're best suited to thrive in. She's nothing but a fish out of water living out here in the boonies. I mean, come on, am I wrong? And obviously, what you can see Sera say here, relates to what Natsuki said about the whole fishes and such, normalcy, different paths and such. I love little moments. I love reading. And so we get this really funny line, not funny line, but it's more naive line from Natsuki, who's like, did Normal pick up a new meaning I'm not aware of or something? And it's one of those things where, yeah, you can't understand. Like Natsuki, like she's not a bad character or anything like that, bad morally, I mean, but she's confused because normal is normal to Natsuki. It's I think so. That's how I think it's time on, because normal to us, all of us, we all have different senses of normal. Like for example, maybe to you or me, we leave fruits on table and such with the fruit bowl and such, but maybe to other people, that's not their normal. Their normal is having fruits, put somewhere else and such like that. It's little things like that, but you can apply it to more big scale things like this, where who we like, who we're sexually attracted to and such. If you're not able to understand that, then it's gonna cause a conflict. Whatever, if you're like, oh, I hate it, or oh, I like it. If you don't even understand the different normals, yeah, it's gonna cause disconnect. That's all I got. I can only cook like once every 10 minutes. And Sakuma says more stuff about Sera, because Sera's actually a really good character. Every time we talked, I felt like I was being forced to confront my least favorite parts of myself. Even my previous animosity towards him was being used against me now. And it's just really good. And Sera, like I said, Sera serves as the perfect neutral balance. The character, like I said, in perspective. Every character has different perspective, viewpoints and such. And Sera has the one that is the most, it's the closest to Ushio we've gotten so far. And so he's able to put us straight on the facts for both us and the characters in the book. Sakuma has lots of character arcs in this story regarding, like, you know, one of the biggest ones that happens in this book is regarding his feelings on Ushio, a character that he's been close to since volume 1 and volume 2, and now they aren't exactly on top terms. They're like those moments in volume 1 where they weren't exactly on talking terms, but it doesn't feel as more impactful as it does here because of, you know, the specific situation. We get a big character dump on the Sakuma that I want to talk about, and that I specifically want to talk about, and also my friend wanted me to talk about too. So this one's for you. Before the culture festival happens, which is where, if you don't know what culture festival here is, poop, and the Romeo and Juliet play happens there. Sorry, I didn't get the chance to really talk about the story there, but during the culture festival, Sakuma actually sees Ushio, who he hasn't talked to in a while, and he sees her actually just hanging out with other people, and she's smiling, and Sakuma's like, well, would you look at that? Guess Ushio does still know how to smile, and wind struck through his heart. And we get this little moment here. It's a bit cynical, it's a bit bad, and Sakuma realizes it's bad, but Sakuma has this revelation that he was hoping that Ushio would be miserable. He was hoping that Ushio would be down, you know, all sad and such, and that Sakuma would be able to be the hero, slide into the DMs, slide into the DMs and be the hero for Ushio. And it makes him realize that he's selfish, that why did I wish this? I wished, like, you know, I had a fallout with a friend, and I'm wishing for them to be miserable so I could fucking slide in and be the hero, and just for my own gain, you know, make myself happy, be like, you know, I'm such a good person, you know. It makes him rethink everything he did for Ushio and others in his life that he's done good things to. Was it all just for his own gain, or did he actually want to help them? Because that revelation where the moment that they actually have conflict and such, they're actually gone, they start immediately wishing that, well, let me try doing this. Well, hope that, okay. It's elaborated way more in the book, because, like I said, if one thing I said about Hachimaku's work is that they fucking ran the shit out of the thoughts, and I love it. I love it so much. It's one of my favorite parts of the entire book. Yeah, it just makes him rethink everything he's done, and it's really, it gets to a point that it actually affects his performance during the Romeo and Juliet play. Did I mention it? No, did I mention it? I don't remember if I said Sakuma's Romeo. Oh my god, I just read that out loud. After the play, Sakuma and Ushio finally get to have a talk, and Sakuma's like, I don't think I should talk to you anymore because I've ruined everything, you know? And Sakuma has this really big all or nothing mindset, you know, either I express all my thoughts to you, every single thought, or I hold all in and do absolutely nothing. And obviously, Ushio's like, no, don't do that. Like, you know, you can understand why Sakuma thinks that way, because during this moment, he caught himself with an intrusive thought about how selfish he is, how much he wants to, you know, he's questioning himself. Like, obviously, did he actually do those things for his own game? Like, no. I don't personally think so, but in those times when you have a big revelation, you start thinking, like, if you have any revelation, like, it's like if your friend betrays you, and you're like, that's a big revelation, and so you think about all the moments where the times you interact with your friend, and you're like, were there signs there, were there signs there, were there signs there? And so it's a similar thing that happens here, where Sakuma catches himself, realizes he fought some bad person, and so he starts looking at all the past actions to question the same thing. But obviously, that isn't the case, because we've seen in Volume 1 and 2, they didn't have Volume 1 and partially Volume 2, that we see they didn't have those thoughts. He was trying to be a best person. And Ushio reaffirms that mindset, being like, you know, all or nothing is a super fucking mindset, bro. And so it's gotta be his balance. It's gotta be a balance, you know, because, you know, sometimes you do express really shitty thoughts, and for a while, you know, I didn't want to be near you. And it was like, fuck, that one hurt. But you expressing your thoughts also makes me extremely happy. You were the first person to come to me when I came out, you know, you supported me. And it was because you expressed those thoughts and those things happened. You made me more happy to be myself and such. And Sakuma realizes his thoughts regarding the whole situation with Ushio and such, you know, whole selfish and own gain and such. And this is simply that it was because I wanted to always stand by Ushio's side. I wasn't ready for her to not need me. you know, I like this scene a lot. I could talk more about certain things, but I'm not going to because, I don't know, I'm trying to control myself. It wasn't purposely trying to wish miserable stuff on Ushio just so we can slide in and save the day. It was more so I was, you know, like what Sakuma said, I wasn't ready for Ushio to not need me. I wanted Ushio to need me because of all the times that she did need me, and the one time that she didn't, I wish that, you know, I wish selfishly that she did need me, and I would be there to save the day. And it's a very obviously it's a very selfish mindset. It's not a mindset that any of us really have, because it can create, you know, bad expectations and such when it doesn't happen. It's good to always be you know, here in reality and most of the time. And so Sakuma's like, you know, let's keep talking about anything and everything without thinking too hard about it either. Just whatever comes to mind. Even if it's this sort of shallow, pointless conversation we'll be sure to forget about come tomorrow. I know there'll be plenty more times down the line where I say or do things that only hurt and make things harder for you, but I hope we can talk those moments out whenever they come along too. Yeah, it's a really nice scene. They've recovered their relationship, and I've actually sort of been neglecting their relationship so far because I'm waiting up for Ushio, but it's here we know Ushio sort of blushes a little bit because they really do like each other. Anyway, but yeah, Sakuma's whole thing, you know, I'll say stupid things to you, but I'll also say nice things to you. And, you know, it's just that's the whole thing about being human, you know, that just happens. We're very complex people, like, you know, and all of us can understand Sakuma's mindset, you know, the all or nothing mindset. Oh, I fucked up. Okay, I'm taking everything back. And, you know, completely ignoring all the times that expressing your thoughts has done a lot of good things, you know, because I can relate to that a lot. There's been a lot of times when, you know, I let my thoughts speak before anything else, and I've said things that have caused, you know, lots of bad things to happen and such, you know. And, you know, obviously during those times, you're like, fuck, I said a bad thing, then the only thing you can remember are the bad things that you said in your past. Like I said, revelation, you look back all past body action, and you're like, maybe I should stop expressing anything, you know? That's obviously not the case, because I can look at it now and be like, well, there are plenty of times that me expressing my thoughts without really thinking much caused good things, and managed to make me say things that I really felt, and maybe people felt important, or, you know, feel appreciated and such. And just because that, you know, the one time where that didn't have the result, it doesn't mean that I should, you know, quit expressing my thoughts, you know? That sounds stupid, but, like, you know, it's one of those things that if you experience, you know, those who know. But yeah, that's Sakuma's arc. I think the best part is just him learning more stuff about himself, you know? Especially from volume 1. It's really good that these characters keep having more arcs in a sense, because there's so much to learn about a character. No one is really one note. What I'm trying to say is every character has layers, and if you put in the hands of a very good writer, they can manage to peel off the onion layers in a sense, to showcase more and have it extend for like a whole series. And that's what I really like about Hachimaku's work. Like, we got a lot of focus on Sakuma, but there's still more stuff to learn about Sakuma, and I'm sure we'll learn more stuff about Sakuma in volume 3. It's not forced or anything like that. It comes off extremely natural, and it relates to his actions. Like, you know, all of his actions, he saved Ushio a lot of times in volume 1, and in volume 2 he does the same thing, but now it's been rephrased and recontextualized to be like, was I being selfish during that, trying to do it for my own gain and such? You know, Sakuma's really good. Yep, that's all I gotta say. Alright, we are on to Ushio. Ushio is still the important character of the story, like main important character of the story, and we get to see a side of her that a more independent side of her, a more side of her that isn't bound by Sakuma or Natsuki. And obviously Sakuma doesn't really like it, but we get to see a different side of Ushio that I really do like, because it makes her more complex. Like I said earlier, if you know the dynamic of the characters and such and how much they care for each other, pushing yourself down just so you can wingman someone else when you like them is such a it tugs at my fucking heartstrings here. To me personally, obviously Ushio has the most moments I relate to, and the best moments that, you know, touch my heart specifically for, you know, I already mentioned that earlier. Yeah, the first thing I want to talk about Ushio is actually the I'm not gonna say it, so I'm just gonna read you a passage, and I want you to make a few guesses. The context here is that Sakuma and Ushio are watching a movie, and suddenly a sex scene pops up in the movie, and Sakuma's like, oh god, please, anything but this. Wait, did they just Sheesh, man. I could feel my face growing hot. This was anything but a pleasant surprise. No, it was a trap, plain and simple. The sort of intimate love-making scene that felt explicitly engineered to make things awkward for the whole family when you were all gathered in the living room on a Friday night, flipping through channels to see if there was any good movies on TV. As I prayed with all my heart for the torch to end soon, I ventured a nervous glance over at Ushio to gauge just how badly she was taking it, and my breath caught in my throat. Her face was not flushed from embarrassment or twisted in disgust. If anything, she just looked bored, head tilted to one side, gazing listlessly at the screen with eyes so cold and empty, you think they've frozen over. It was like her mind had completely checked out. I was taken aback by her reaction. It was a bit of a strange feeling, I had to admit, like I'd just been giving a peek behind the curtain and seen a glimpse of some fundamental part of Ushio as a person. Now, what are you thinking right now? With all the context regarding the series, regarding who Ushio is so far, I just make a guess, I'll give you like 5 seconds. Alright, so you have that line where Ushio just reacts silently. And then you get the illustration. When I saw this for the first time, when I read this thought process, I was thinking like one thing. Oh, it's like Ushio not doesn't like sexual stuff, asexual stuff like that, or just isn't really a fan of sexual stuff, like, you know, stuff like that. But when I turned the page and I saw this, I immediately understood. And those who know. Sorry. So, well, this is my interpretation of it, of course. I know some people have the same interpretation, some people don't, and they think Ushio just had to lock in. It was two interpretations for me. One, that Ushio is asexual, or two, Ushio goes blank/silent at the thought of looking at something, an intimate act between man and woman that is something that she will never get to experience because she was born a male. She doesn't have breasts, she doesn't have a vagina. That's a scene that, you know, obviously, and it's like one of those things where it's like, you really have to look at the words to gauge what Ushio's really thinking, because in Sakuma's mind, Sakuma's like, she just looked bored. But then, and I talked about other people and the like, and most of us can agree this is heavy gender dysphoria scene, and you can obviously see it if you, those who know, sorry, but obviously see it if you, like, you know, understand that perspective of being trans and then seeing, like, you know, something that you aren't going to have because of how you were born. I wish I had more to say about it because it's a really good scene, but it's one of those scenes that don't last that long, and so you really have to use, like, not your imagination, but like, you know, your critical thinking skills to really illustrate what Ushio is thinking here. Regarding the gender dysphoria scene, I think it's easily the best one in volume 2. The thing is, the fact, like, in terms of writing sense, the fact we get it described only from Sakuma's perspective, like, you know, showing us what he thinks, until we get that illustration, it's brilliant. It's amazing, like, what first person perspectives can do and show us and tell us, but also what it doesn't tell us. We only see the events in Sakuma's eyes, so we see what he thinks, we see what he interprets it. But the moment we get an illustration, all that is thrown out the roof. For the first time, we aren't seeing it from Sakuma's perspective. We're seeing it from our, like, you know, our own perspective. We can gather clues and information from the illustration itself. We don't need to use Sakuma as a middleman for it, you know, and it leads us to, we can think clearly for ourselves instead of thinking for Sakuma. Like, imagine, like, Sakuma describes Natsuki, you know, short, middle-aged hair and such. You can just imagine and such, but imagine you turn the next page, you see the actual illustration. You can finally see more small, intricate details that perhaps Sakuma didn't notice. And it's one of those, it's moments like that that make me really love the first-person view, because you can use it. If you know how to use the first-person view, you can also know how to break it, how to use it against the reader. One of my friends, they were like, you know, oh, like, you know, I'm glad, you know, Sakuma was like, oh, that's gender dysphoria, and they just left it, you know. I like books that respect the reader, you know? Like, obviously, I don't want, like completely too vague. I have to watch a video essay about it. Hi, guys. But I also don't like it being, like, spoon-fed, like, you know, having everything need to be explained for no reason when it doesn't really need to. And it's one of the best scenes, just from a relatable standpoint, but also from a writing standpoint, because goddamn, this is really well written, like, in terms of, like, doing the structure, using everything. It's, oh yeah, and we get to see a bit more difference between Ushio and Sakuma that relates to, you know, what Sera said. You know, man, she and I really are different, huh? I didn't know where the sun thought had come from, but there was something about this whole situation that only served to hammer home the sheer magnitude of the disparity between Ushio and me, both as individuals and in terms of our lived experiences. Not that I found this a particularly unpleasant or saddening realization. It was just the way that things were, plain and simple, and I could live with that. And obviously that gets challenged later in the book, where you can't live with that, but, you know, it's good. Foreshadowing! Anyway, I think the one thing I can say about Ushio, like, is that she starts to grow more independent because she starts to get more accepted, and that's, you know, obviously a good thing, because we don't really know much about Ushio's past life when she was a boy. We knew Ushio was popular, like, you know, pop with everyone, but let's not like a trace of that. Once we get into volume 2, where she starts to regain that popularity and start talking to more people, obviously Sakuma's like, but it's really good in Ushio's mind, because now I can actually finally talk about it. Ushio gets elected for the culture festival for this school play, which is Romeo and Juliet, and she's elected by other classmates, and she's like, I won't do it, I'm fine, I guess I'll do it and such. And so yeah, she gets elected as Juliet, not comfortable with it, but went forward with it. And when she actually gets to be in the dress, and when she gets, you know, sing lines and such, everyone loves it. She feels fucking amazing, and she feels so happy. And I'm trying to find the scene right now. Okay, I can't find it, but I'll try to find it in post. But it's basically a scene where Ushio actually takes a rain check to literally just take in the moment that she was praised for who she looked as and who she was perceived as. And but it's just a scene where we start to see more people grow more accepting of Ushio. It's good for Ushio. She starts to realize that she can talk to more people and such. You know, it wasn't just like people actually see her as human. Well, that's crazy. Anyway, and so Ushio becomes more independent. And without Sakuma's life, you know, Sakuma feels sad and such. From Sakuma's perspective, we see it, you know, with the culture festival being like, oh, well, Ushio, I guess Ushio can still smile. But from Ushio's perspective, like, Ushio did say some mean stuff. Like, let's not deny facts here. Like, you know, regarding the dinner scene and Ushio addressing her true thoughts, being like, you know, yeah, I didn't actually want to be Juliet. Sorry, Natsuki. It's complicated because from one perspective, from Ushio's perspective, she's actually talking to people now. We don't really get to see her talk with really anyone until at this point where she hangs out with other people in the culture festival. And to Sakuma, it's a really heart-wrenching moment for him, but for Ushio, it might be a really good moment. It's complex. I'm not exactly sure how to describe it here, because for a majority of the time in volume 1, Ushio didn't really have anyone to fall upon, so Sakuma was there for her. And so for the first time, Ushio doesn't have that problem, and so she's actually be able to be free. She's actually able to have a life that doesn't have Sakuma in it. And obviously, I'm not trying to say like, you know, Sakuma was like fucking like imprisoning her or something like that, but you know, obviously it can get to a level of obsession, you know, when you just feel, because obviously it's not, I mean, some people, like, this is my perspective, you know, imagine being just only in one friend group your entire life, you know. Like, I know a lot of people I know have multiple friend groups, you know. It doesn't matter how close you are and like how not close you are. And from a way you can really interpret this as way, you know, like Ushio abandoning Sakuma and Natsuki when it isn't the case, and obviously they've reforged their bonds again. Just because, you know, and just because you don't hang out with one friend for like a little bit doesn't mean like you're like, screw them, I'm leaving you, goodbye. Obviously I used to have that mindset, but it's really bad. Don't, for the love of God, do not have that mindset. You gotta learn to chillax. It's really interesting because, like I mentioned earlier, with the dynamic of the group, these characters get separated more. We get to see how their bond just twinge. And like, you know, like I mentioned, for Natsuki joining the student committee, Sakuma doing his own thing, and it's more heavily apparent for Ushio. That's all I can say right now. You can tell I'm starting to lose my thoughts here. Ushio gets to be more of her own person here. And not to say she wasn't, but someone that isn't bound by Sakuma in a way that we don't directly see into her thoughts. And the main reason why I'm saying all that, I'm not trying to be like, Sakuma's taking Ushio all for himself. No, I'm just saying that because we have to remember, we're in the first person perspective. All we're seeing this is in Sakuma's perspective, and the brief moments we see outside that view with like illustrations and such. So I really am sort of jumping the gun here, but like when it comes to the times we actually see Sakuma without Ushio, we're able to make a bit more of a out there take on Ushio, because we don't see what Ushio's thinking or what Sakuma thinks Ushio's thinking. We have to sort of infer that on our own, and that's a challenging thing for me because I can't really think that well, especially when recording all this in like one go. Surprisingly, I'm not talking about too much romance stuff in this because the romance has been toned down slightly, and it's because of the plots and such. It's more character driven, you know, and I actually really do like that for both Natsuki, Sakuma, and Ushio. So Sakuma's really good, but Ushio's a bit more of a complicated one because I feel like there's a lot more about Ushio that's more complex and like, you know, complex nuance and such. But the fact we don't get to see much of it from Sakuma's eyes means I have to sort of play the guessing game, and obviously some people might have different interpretations of that. So that's why I'm sort of holding myself back a bit from just saying everything I can, because I might be doing what out there takes. But there's one character in the book that you can understand really well, without too much in-depth, like, you know, knowledge. You don't really need to see him or anything like that. And it's Sera. And you know, I mentioned Sera so many times already, so I'm putting his own section here because he's actually a really good character. Like I mentioned earlier, he's the sort of neutral balance to those who know, those who don't. That's like, and he can serve as that balance to illustrate what potentially Ushio's thinking and how biased their mindset is. You know, in volume 1, Sera was purely the antagonist. He challenges Sakuma's mindset while being a direct threat in terms of Ushio, because Sakuma wants Ushio all for himself. And in Volume 2, now that he's an antagonist per se, because of Ushio and such, he serves as the perfect contrast to the other characters coming from Tokyo, more progressive mindset and such. The author really does use him to like a really great degree. He's the one that provides not the solution, but he's the one that provides like the hard-hitting questions that actually make you think in order to actually grow as a person. I don't like him personally. I think he's more funny in the comic relief sense, but like he's also incredibly smart, so it also makes him a bit of a threat if like he knows what he's doing. But he doesn't really do that much in this book besides just be like, well, how do I make you think? He's a very why not type of person, you know, and he thinks it makes things more interesting and such, while also acknowledging, you know, the sort of caveats that can come with it, you know, being different, being separated from being uncategorized or being categorized in different groups because of what you feel or think. The one thing that really illustrates to me that how much non-serious, how he describes this section right here, where Sera's like, "Hey Sakuma," Sera called after me. For once, there was something in this tone that sounded actually sincere. This made me a bit curious, so I turned around. "What is it now? Why do you think Romeo and Juliet both died at the end of the play? It's just a series of tragic coincidences." "No, what I'm saying is, why can't it just be one or the other?" "I don't know. Why?" Sera gave a soft, amicable smile. "Because it makes for a much more interesting story that way." And that single line about Sera saying that, because it makes it for a much more interesting story, has always stuck with me, and I haven't been able to pinpoint it why. And this is really off topic, but it actually reminds me of Attack on Titan, where Armin asks on Nakapon why his skin color is different. Obviously, it's not in a racist way because he came from fucking Paradise, so he doesn't actually know. But on Nakapon is like, well, God thought it'd be very interesting to create people with different skin colors, just like how he created you subjects of Ymir. Like I said, interesting, and that's what I think about when I think about Sera. Interesting. Yeah, that's the whole mindset I have with Sera, and it makes him much more, I don't want to say insincere character, because he obviously does have some sincere moments, but, you know, he can sympathize with Ushio. He's just a cocky little shit, you know, he sympathizes, he understands, he's able to put in a way that other people can understand, but it makes the story a bit more interesting if it were compared to just having a dude that, you know, that also understood, but he was a bit more nice or polite about it and such, which is why I really like Sera's character, because just like what he said, it makes the story more interesting. So next thing I really want to talk about is reactions, like how I talked about in Volume 1. And the reactions here are a lot more, well, they're more positive, so obviously I really appreciate that. It's a much more positive reaction from everyone. And we actually see an actual adult viewpoint from one of the teachers, Miss Ino. There was a brief mention of it in Volume 1, but in Volume 2, she actually gets to really talk about it as she lectures Nishizuna about it. And it's a really good scene because for a while we've only seen the students talk about it, but now we get like an actual adult talking about it like formally and such, and how she feels about it and such, and how, you know, it sort of affects the school and such, which is really cool. I guess I can also mention everyone praising Ushio when she wears the Juliet dress. Let me see if I can find it in the book, show you maybe some snippets of text and such, because it's still a really good scene. But there is still resentment. It's not like, you know, all sunshine and rainbows, and that's what I really love about the book. It's very realistic. Like, there's obviously going to still be resentment, and even then, there was only a couple of people, like a group of people in the play itself that praised Ushio. It wasn't the entire school. And so we have people like, we have this one person, his name's Noi, that still resents Ushio's transition, because he used to know Ushio when she used to be in the track team and such, and so when she transitioned, she left, and he's like, nah, I fucking hate this motherfucker. And once Ushio actually does go in the play, and the play lifts up, everyone's like, that's fucking Ushio? And like, are you sure it's a dude and such? You know, those fucking comments and such. It's a really heartwarming scene, both for Ushio and, like, you know, possibly you the reader, because you've been seeing how much shit she's gone through. And then one moment, finally at the end of Volume 2, she gets that moment. Like, you know, in Volume 2, she gets that moment multiple times. It's just, it's redeeming in a sense. It's redeeming. And that still has been the main focal point of the Mimosa Confession, and I'm still glad it's getting a lot of focus here. Ushio is still a main character, and that is the reason why I got into this series, and I'm so glad that it's reaching its points where it's becoming realistic. Yes, it's still realistic, but it's also leaning towards a more positive outlook, which, you know, inspire hope and tell us that we can be who we want to be, and that can be a bit hard, you know, in today's real life. So, and showing us that it can be bad in both fiction, but it can also get better. And, you know, fiction affects reality whether we like it or not, so maybe things will get better. Okay, so as you can see, it was recorded at a later date. I just woke up, my hair's messy as hell. I was gonna choose a better date to record, but my time is not that luxurious anymore, so I'm gonna have to record this right now because I'm really busy right now. So I'm gonna have to record this right now before I go to sleep. I only have a few more sections here. Firstly, it's time to actually summarize the main plot, and I've been giving you key points, but right now I'm actually gonna connect them all. So Volume 2 follows the aftermath of the climax from Volume 1. Ushio kisses Sakuma, and Natsuki's like, oh my goodness, and so this causes a rift between the friend group naturally, not because of some grudge or anything, but just because of some misunderstandings and the like. And so the first chapter of the book is basically essentially dedicated to reforming their bonds and strengthening the whole new school year with the aquarium scene and just basically reestablishing these characters and the whole status quo, and eventually reintroducing the relationship these people have with each other, and reiterating that there is a love triangle thing going on, and it's probably not going to be leaving anytime soon. And so the main big part of the entire story right now is the culture festival and the Romeo and Juliet play. Admittedly, when I first heard this premise when reading the Volume 2, I was excited because obviously I knew Ushio was going to be Juliet and Sakuma was going to be Romeo, which obviously is the case. But it provides a lot of potential for how Ushio is going to be playing a girl and how that's going to be perceived by everyone in the school, everyone who going to be in the play, and how people are going to react. And that was my biggest, not fear, but my biggest focus of attention when I heard that premise, and it does do it pretty well in my opinion. And then starting from there, that was where to also sign up for the student council committee program with Sakuma and Natsuki. So we have two plots going on. This volume isn't really that heavy in terms of plot. Like I said way earlier in the video, it's way more character driven, and so that sort of comes at the cost with plot points not being that major. There are plot points, but more so minor plot points. It introduces some more characters, such as Todoroki, who handles most of the directing for Romeo and Juliet. She doesn't get really that much presence, but she is a character that serves a purpose. I'm gonna be saying the purpose soon because I can't think of one. And the thing is, we get little seeds of future things here and there. They can obviously tell they're gonna be following up on. The biggest example being Nishizono and Noi, the classroom. I think I might have mentioned them. Hopefully I did. If I don't, Future Noodle, hit me right now, with Noi. And while they both serve as seeds to potential plot points, they also serve as like I said, with the whole multiple people showing their viewpoints and such, they also establish the point that despite how things have changed, some things are still the same. Some people are still going to be extremely bigoted against Ushio. Some people are going to be very against it. And those characters, even no matter how little or how much big of screen time they get, their presence is definitely noted, and how, it's a very realistic reminder that, there's not always going to be people that's going to be accepting you. And on the flip side, with people like Todoroki and the like, you have people that, the whole point of Todoroki, Todoroki is sort of someone who doesn't really give a shizzles about who Ushio is. It makes her presence more known as she starts focusing on the things that aren't really directly related to Ushio's gender identity and such. So just focusing on her her acting and the like. She gives off the vibe of, I don't really give a shizzles, and only focuses on the things that matter, and everything else just okay, doesn't really matter. And you can see it in the writing where I'm pretty sure she doesn't really mention Ushio's identity pretty much at all, because she doesn't really care. I think in terms of serving it from a narrative story point, I think it's good to show, like I said, I'm gonna be connected to the whole theme of all the different characters providing different viewpoints, and I think hers so far is it's close to Sera, but in a completely different direction, where you just it's not more so you sympathize to understand. It's more you don't really care. I think it's an interesting mindset to have, and I think she was done really well. And so after that, the conflict at the dinner scene happens, where Ushio reveals she never wanted to be Juliet, causing grief within the friend group because Natsuki wanted her to be Juliet. She reveals her true thoughts there, and then from there, the plot sort of, divides into its own paths again as everyone becomes a bit more separated and more individualized in a sense. Sakuma and Natsuki have to deal with the problems with Ushio, with connecting with Ushio and such, along with having their own personal problems due to their circumstances, such as Sakuma with his whole mind battle thing that's going on inside with his whole fight, which I talked about in the Sakuma section. Hopefully you remember that. Hopefully I remember that. And Natsuki with her own overwhelming responsibilities, choosing to be essentially the main head honcho of the student committee program, having to do everything and organize everything. Sakuma and Natsuki get closer due to the situations that they're in, and the culture festival does go well with a few hiccups, and the story concludes. Sakuma fucks up because he's going for a whole mind spool in his head while doing the Romeo and Juliet play. It all goes well, and everyone's back together in a sense. So yeah, it's not a very complicated plot. In fact, it's not really that much plot heavy at all, despite, you know, yeah, a lot more stuff happens in Volume 1 compared to Volume 2, but Volume 2 has more bigger moments in a sense. Those moments sort of carry the story as far as it can go because the other parts are sort of just there, so which I'll talk about more. But I do really love how much more in depth they give to each of the characters, Sakuma, Natsuki, and Ushio. Sakuma, it's always nice to see Sakuma's mindset play out because we're in the first person perspective of him. We get to see what he thinks, including how much he self-doubts himself and how much his thoughts just intertwine in this whole spiral thing until he has to go to someone else to make sure to actually clear it up because, you know, sometimes we can't do everything by ourselves. Ushio, we get a lot more depth with her, with how she becomes a bit more human in a sense, and we get to see more elements of what she is like without Sakuma's, not interference, but without Sakuma's, you know, fog-colored glasses. When he takes the glasses off, you know, he sees Ushio as what she actually is. And Natsuki, I already talked all about Natsuki with how much her character sort of evolves because of the effects of Sakuma and Ushio and what they do. So here's some of the scenes that I really liked from the... First thing I liked was Gen Dysphoria scene. It was literally the first scene that happens in the first 30 pages of the book. And it literally made me put the fucking book down and have a whole... I didn't even think about this, you know, whole moment. Like, it was so good. And I still haven't forgotten that fucking illustration. Still locked in my head. Locked in. So, and the second one is the Natsuki aquarium scene. It's a nice brief. It's like it's both a representation of Ushio and how Natsuki related to in terms of like fish. It's a really weird scene, but like it's a good scene, and it's the one that like sort of lingers on for a bit in a good way because Sakuma's like, what the fuck, why are we talking about fish? And you can obviously tell that Sakuma doesn't really exactly get it, but from Natsuki's perspective and our perspective, we can easily point out the parallels of what Natsuki's probably referencing and what she probably has in mind, either intentionally or otherwise, that she's thinking of Ushio right now. The third scene is right before chapter 3 ends. We get the scene between Sakuma and Ushio where this is after the aquarium date, after where they finally clear up all misconceptions that they aren't dating. And it's pretty clear at the end of the aquarium scene, it's pretty much heavily implied that Ushio still has feelings for Sakuma, and Natsuki still has feelings for Ushio, and Sakuma still has feelings for Natsuki, so they're still back in the fucking same state that they were in. But during the scene, Ushio's hanging out with Sakuma in Sakuma's house, and Sakuma's just being the most fucking nicest guy you can ever think of, you know, always paying attention to Ushio. Oh, you need some tea? I'm gonna get you some tea and such. And so Ushio actually just pulls out a fucking... Ushio mutters this out, like, unprompted. God, it's so hard when you're nice to me. And then immediately, Ushio's like, no, you didn't hear that. And Sakuma's like, okay. And he just ignores that. And Sakuma's like, so I'm just gonna ignore that. And then chapter 3 ends and we move on to chapter 4. Like, it's one of those things where it's both, one, funny. Number two, it's stupid. The next thing I like is the one where Ushio obviously gets praises from everyone while in the Juliet dress. I think it was either the Juliet dress or the acting, I don't know. But either way, it's always stuck in my head when Ushio takes like a rain check and Sakuma goes to check up on her and she's actually crying because of how overwhelmed she feels and how, like, you know, it's like, obviously from Ushio's perspective, it's like the first time she's been treated like a human being and being like validated in such an immense way that she hasn't seen like fucking forever. Like, Jesus Christ, it's just an immensely validating scene, and especially coming from volume 1 in the beginning, you know, other parts of volume 2, it makes it worth it, you know. Very validating in a lot of ways, which I really love. That's you know, which is, I'm gonna be completely biased. Where's my book? Which, you know, is I'm completely biased against, because the whole reason why I got into the Mimosa confession was because of, you know, the trans girl Mimosa. No, that's not her fucking name. That's Ushio, bro. Because trans girl Ushio, and that's been my reason for reading it. That's been one of my biggest reasons for reading it, and obviously it's good to see it still have a presence in here, and I hope it still continues to have a presence in the later volumes. Alright, all the Sera scenes especially, I have to always commemorate them. He always pulls out the most wisest wisdom and makes you really think, both to Sakuma and I keep saying the audience, I mean the reader. If it was the show, I would say audience, but to the reader, Sera constantly challenges Sakuma's mindset and challenges our mindset if we're not already familiar with, like, you know, terms of like polygamy and transgender and such. Like I say, it serves that really good balance, that really far viewpoint that isn't exactly the same state as Ushio, but one that can literally pretty much sympathize and understand and put it in the words of what Ushio is probably thinking. And it's one of those scenes where you don't like Sera, but you do like what he does. Like, you know, I don't like the character Sera, but I do like his actions because of what he does to the narrative in the story and how much he pushes people forward, either even if it is like in not like, you know, the most encouraging ways. Like, he makes Sakuma question himself a lot. He makes him go into mental spirals, either intentionally or otherwise. I don't think he's that smart, but it gets to a point that Sakuma is able to better himself because of that and overcome his very flawed and biased viewpoints regarding certain topics. So next thing I want to talk about is Sakuma and Natsuki down themselves. A quick conversation that happens after Natsuki fucks up with the steering committee, lets somebody break, and it's a long story, but basically it's her fault essentially because she didn't really protect in a sense, and Sakuma is also going for his mind break right now, and so the two of them get to have a heart-to-heart conversation that we haven't really seen in the series so far, besides things regarding Ushio and the like. But it's one of the few times where both of them are sort of at their lowest, and it's those times when it's at that time when they really open up in a sense. And the thing is, the conversation doesn't even really go anywhere. They just really stare at each other and be like, I keep fucking up and such. And, you know, Sakuma's like, yeah, I understand, but, you know, yeah, you know, I fuck up too. And it's just basically just a whole back and forth here. And even though, like, the conversation isn't like getting more logical points and such, it doesn't really take much word to know that they've sort of not gotten to a new level, but they unlock more certain bonds with each other in terms of, like, you know, when you see someone at their lowest, when you see someone vulnerable and such, like, you know, if you know that one chill friend and suddenly he actually starts breaking down and shit, that sticks with you. And so you've seen the side of them that they usually don't show to anyone else. That's what happens in that scene. And even though nothing of really much value happens in it, the bond has been sort of permanently changed because of how they saw each other at their lowest, and, you know, still pushed each other up. And there's those little moments that, you know, that further each other's bonds, either be, you know, romantic or platonic. And it's one that's built up across the entire series, across the entire volume so far. So it feels like it really does make me a bit happy that it's Sakuma and Natsuki. Like I said, each of these characters affect each other, but it doesn't need to be both bad ways. It can be in also really good ways. They don't need to self-sabotage each other, but if they do have each other, then they're able to get things together. And that's one of the few, like, one of many cases that they use the bonds between each other and how much they affect each other to actually change each other for the better. And I keep saying for the better so hard, so I am so sorry for making the subtitles in the future. So I have gone a bit soft on this book, but I do have a few critiques about the story, and I did make a Reddit post about it. If you use Reddit, I don't use Reddit. The biggest critique I have about this is something that I've been alluding to for quite a while. This is character driven, and I love that, but it is not plot driven. When it comes to this plot in specific, I remember reading it and thinking sort of nothing. And what I mean by that is volume 1 was pretty concise. Read it from all first page all the way to the last page. It had an ending that was a cliffhanger, firstly, and maybe left wanting more in a sense, like, oh my god, I can't believe what's gonna happen next. But for this one, from page 1 to the end of the story, before I get into a spoiler alert, I felt wanting more, and not in the way of holy shit, what's gonna happen. No, it's more so what's next? And why? The reason why I say that is because of the ending. You may have mentioned me saying earlier in the story that not much exactly happens. The status quo remains the same. You may remember me saying that the relationship between all of them at the end of volume 2 is pretty much the same as it used to be, and the whole book was just spent sort of reforging it. And even though they have like the close bond moments and such, I hadn't like the core point of it is that they are essentially back in the same state. And the thing is, it is stated directly in the book that, like, you know, oh, things just went back to the things they were, you know, and we're probably gonna mess up again. And it's just like not many things were technically resolved in a sense, and it leads to a very underwhelming ending in my opinion. Volume 1 was pretty concise beginning to end, but volume 2 feels like it's the middle chapter of a trilogy or a quadrilogy, something like that, but it just feels like the middle chapter. Like, it's not that important, but you do need it to gain, like, you do need it to understand certain details. It's like in a video game where it's like okay, here's my best example. It's like one of the Kingdom Hearts spin-offs, where it's not exactly essential to the story, like for example Recoded, but it has story elements that are important enough that you actually do need to play it in order to understand it without, before YouTube and like. And so that's how I feel about the Most Confessions Volume 2. And it's not to say that there aren't good moments in this book. There's plenty of good moments, like, for example, the whole Jin Dysphoria scene and like, and just like with Kingdom Hearts Recode, there's good moments in that story too. But the point is, it doesn't feel as important. Like, I'm not really gonna, there's not really many things I'm gonna remember from Volume 2 besides certain things. I'm remembering the character moments and such, which is really good for me. But in terms of the actual plot, another statement I have about this is that part 1 was consistently good. If we're gonna use the graph and such regarding, like, best moment over the time pages, number of the pages, or the best, like, awesome moments, Volume 1 is consistently good from beginning to end. And I'm gonna say this one about Volume 2, and it's okay if you disagree on, like, but Volume 2 has moments that are better than Volume 1. But overall, it's a bit lower in a sense. Now, that's not to say it's bad. Just because I think it's the weakest one so far doesn't mean it's bad. It's like if I put in a tier list, Most Confessions is S tier, Most Confessions Volume 2 is A tier. Doesn't mean it's shit, because there's other shit like actual down there below. But in terms of comparing it to the 2 volumes that we have so far, I do not feel very satisfied with this in a sense. And I can change because, like I said, there are seed points that are plotted in here that could potentially be followed up in Volume 2, and that can, make me reread Volume 2, be like, oh my goodness, there are moments I planned here, that's so cool, and stuff like that. But for right now, I wasn't exactly left satisfied with this book. If Volume 2 and 3 came at the same time, I'd probably be less harsh about this, but it's one of those cases where the wait between volumes can really affect my view on something, because it's like when you read Jujutsu Kaisen weekly, and if it ends on like really bad points, but you're just like, oh dude, this series is fucking fallen. But like after a bunch of chapters have dropped in, have come out, and you read them all in a row, you're like, holy shit, it all connects together, and it's actually really good. And I was just really stupid because I was focusing on the weekly thing. And that's how I feel sort of about Most Confessions Volume 2. I feel like I'm being a bit too harsh about this because, it's not exactly the book Volume 2's fault that Volume 3 isn't out. And, this is a series after all. These aren't one-offs individually. These are meant to all be connected. All meant to be connected. So there's a missing one right here that's gonna be coming out soon. And so, using that with that mindset in mind, I'm gonna be a little bit softer on it because I found more moments to enjoy about in this book, but overall I still do have the opinion that Volume 2 isn't exactly better than Volume 1, but I think it's a good follow-up, but not one that I can. And I'm just gonna say right now, the ending can really make or break it. Nothing really happens. And that sounds stupid. No, stuff does happen, but the ending makes it be like, well, the ending makes it go, well, this isn't over. I know things are gonna keep happening and such. And it just ends like that. Like, oh, what other things are gonna be happening? And you just leave me fucking edged like that. You're gonna be leaving me more. I don't know. It's like the end of an arc. There we go. It feels like the end of an arc, but there's no transition point to the next arc. So you're just like, am I done reading? For some animes and such, whenever they finish like a sort of like lackluster arc, there's always like a little teaser to be like, there's something new that's gonna happen. Get yourself excited. But for this, it's just like it's like watching like a really lackluster arc end, and then that's it. That's fucking it. I can't really find a good anime comparison right now because I haven't really watched any good anime. So just think about an anime on a bad arc, and then after the arc ends, there's no teaser for the next arc. It's just like it just ends like that. You just got way bit, and you're like, the fuck? Okay, that was kind of ass. But that's probably my biggest critique about this. It's just the plot that happens in the book isn't really gonna be. You probably could not make me really remember it that much. I'll remember the characters in the moments, but I won't really remember the plot in a sense. And so that's why it just feels like it doesn't. It needs to exist, but also doesn't need to exist. It's still. I'm telling you, Kingdom Hearts spin-off right here. At the end of the book, Volume 1, at the end of the book, there was an afterward discussing about how the author Mei Hachimaku basically discussed how like they wrote the story, and But for Volume 2, it does not end like that. It ends on a prelude. So the first thing that catches us off guard when reading the prelude is that you aren't actually in the perspective of Sakuma. And as you read it, it gets more obvious that this is not Sakuma. For example, you can get stuff like, you get like details like, I moved over from where I was sitting to a bench that was still in the shade. The chilly fall air pricked up goosebumps on my exposed legs as I carefully set my butt down the icy metal. On second thought, maybe staying in the sunlight would be better after all, I thought to myself. And then you get a direct message from Ushio walking up to the character saying, Hey Natsuki, sorry to keep you waiting, she told me. No worries, I just got here myself, I replied. Sorry for the sudden invite. In the scene between Natsuki and Ushio, no Sakuma in sight, Natsuki finally admits to Ushio that she liked her, or used to like her, in a sense. So, listen, said Ushio. I actually used to really like you, Ushio-chan. I felt bad for even putting her in this position, but I wanted to believe it was an okay time to bring this up. I mean, it was past tense after all. Sorry, said Ushio, turned to face me with a pensive expression. This might sound bad, but I kind of already knew, to be honest. Yeah, no, I figured you had a clue. I mean, I'm pretty easy to read, so I'm sure I wasn't being super subtle about it. I tried to laugh it off to conceal my own embarrassment. So, you used to like me? Ushio asked. I can tell from her wary tone that she didn't really want to probe, but felt like it was an important distinction. Yeah, but I only mean that in like the romantic sense, of course, because, yeah, obviously, if we're talking just as friends, I mean, I love you, Ushio-chan. Even with the just as friends modifier, it felt like such a monumental thing to say I love you to another person that I still had a hard time spitting the words out. Thanks, Natsuki, Ushio said with a chuckle. I love you too. She was also saying this as a friend, obviously, and while this was exactly the response I've been hoping for, and the sentiment really did make me want to jump out of my seat of joy, it still hurt just a little bit to hear her say it. I know my feelings for her had been stronger than that when she was a boy, but I wasn't sure if I still felt the same way now that she was a girl. But after watching her perform up there on stage, it finally hit me. Those feelings were still there, and I felt them just as strongly. It's just that they were in the past tense now. So, tell me, I said, do you regret playing Juliet after all? It's just a really sobering disparity is the thing. When I'm actually playing Juliet, and I can express myself and everyone loves me, things are pretty great. Because even though I'm playing a character, I don't have to hide who I am or how I feel. But then once the show is over, and the mask comes off, it's then that I feel like I have to put a lid on my heart, and go back to being someone I'm not. And I guess it's that transition phase itself that I find so hard, like jumping straight from the sauna into an ice-cold swimming pool. I'm just not sure my immune system can take it. So, yeah. If there's anything I regret about this whole thing, it's probably that. I had to admit, some of this explanation went over my head, but I knew what she meant. I knew all too well. So I was right then. When I was watching the play, I remembered actually feeling jealous of Romeo during one of the scenes where Juliet was pouring her heart out at him, so desperate to find the words to express her love. Because that was the moment I realized that someone as sincere and single-minded as her would only ever have eyes for the one they loved. And simultaneously, that as much as I liked Ushio, those feelings would never be returned, which was when I knew that they could only be in the past tense. Our little culture festival was quickly coming to an end. I should probably get going, I said, standing up. There are still things I needed to do, like deal with the remaining items in the lost and found and start getting ready for the closing ceremony. Okay, said Ushio, standing up as well. Guess I'll see you later then. Yeah, still looking forward to our little after party. See you in a bit. I waved goodbye and stood up from the main entrance. Natsuki, she called after me, and I turned around. Ushio looked at me with the most earnest eyes I'd ever seen. You can do this, she said. I believe in you, Natsuki. I could feel sudden warmth building up in the pit in my stomach as I forced my lips into a smile just to stop them from trembling. Thanks, yeah, I said. I'm gonna give it my all. Just you watch me. I swiveled back around and started walking. And then I walked faster. And then I ran right past the takoyaki stand. Right past the main entrance, choosing whatever side path would take me as far away from people as possible. And as I kept on running, I could feel tears streaming down my cheeks. Still, I ran until I was way too winded to run any longer, and I found myself standing all alone in a little clearing behind the empty swimming pool. I took a moment to catch my breath, then wiped my tears off my sleeves as I turned my head up towards the clouds. Oh, wow. I never knew an autumn sky could look so sweet. I'm near towards the end of the video. Okay, I should probably start speeding this up, but the most important part about this prelude to me is simply the perspective change. The immediate second you change the perspective of anyone, there's a whole new set of sort of rules that we need to learn, understand, because we're not in Sakuma's mindset anymore. We know how he thinks, we know how he operates. So going to the mind of Natsuki, someone we've only seen from the external, now we get to actually see her internal. We actually now like understand what she thinks, what she feels, and you know, because sometimes we see her, she can be a bit airhead, she can be a bit oblivious, but here we can get moments where she's more knowledgeable. Not to say she's stupid, but we get to see her notice details we don't really get to see her express out loud, being like, oh, I noticed that, oh, I noticed that. No, she's thinking about all in her head. And I really do like that we finally get sort of talk about Natsuki's feelings on Ushio. Natsuki sometimes expressed to Sakuma regarding like, you know, if I actually like Ushio, yes or no. But it's made pretty clear here that Natsuki still does like Ushio, but knows it can't be reciprocated. And, you know, obviously, I can feel for Natsuki a lot, just simply by the fact that you know someone is not going to like you, and you can see clear piece of evidence around that, and you indirectly get validated on those feelings, be like, yeah, I know. And it's just a little heartbreaking in a sense when Ushio starts talking about, you know, how I can be free when whenever I'm in the Juliet costume, how I can actually express myself. You don't have to hide who I am, how I feel. And then Natsuki interprets both this as, yeah, you're great, you can be yourself, but also since you aren't hiding your feelings anymore, I know what your feelings are, and your feelings are for Sakuma when you were like, you know, being like, I was actually feeling jealous of Romeo during one of the scenes where Juliet was pouring her heart out to him, so desperate to find the words to express her love. And using that context in with Ushio not hiding her feelings at all and talking to Sakuma, you can probably put 2 and 2 together. Oh, also, when Ushio starts describing it, like when she gets in the dress, she can feel comfortable being herself, and immediately when she's done, it's like jumping from like a sauna to like an ice cold thing. That I was gonna say something, but it's exactly how I feel with freaking cosplay. I didn't get a chance to say it, so I'm saying it right now. Reaching the final page of the volume, I don't really know what to say about it, honestly. And all goodness gracious, it's I don't know, I can't really express it right now because, I don't know, it's more emotional in a sense, but I can appreciate from both a writing perspective and also from a writing perspective, also like sort of like a build-up climax moment, that this is something that we didn't exactly know we wanted, but something that we needed. And because we've been getting all thoughts of Sakuma's and like, especially regarding the feelings, we know Sakuma's feelings for Natsuki. We pretty much know Ushio's feeling Sakuma because she's fucking direct about it, but we don't know about Natsuki's feelings about Ushio. So getting finally a chance to see this is really well worth it. And this isn't new, by the way. Like, obviously this is not new. Liking someone doesn't like you back and they like someone else, that's like a fucking trope that's a trope that's as old as tale as time itself, or something like that. But one of the things when I think about the Mimosa Confessions is not just because I went into it because of the because of Ushio, transgender. That's like, you know, a topic I don't really see talked about that often, and I'm really glad it did that with flying colors. But I also got themes of trying to be a better person of yourself, and just, it's like I came for one thing, but I got a bunch of other stuff that I can also really appreciate and enjoy. Like, you know, I only read for mainly Ushio, but I also got introduced to like so many moments and character development that really touches me, and a lot of stuff that I can, you know, personally relate to and such. Obviously in the time, like, you know, it obviously depends on the time that you're in. If I'm reading this when I'm like, I haven't felt any of that stuff, like, okay, I can sort of understand. But, you know, obviously, since I've been through a lot of this stuff, I felt a lot of this stuff, you know, it hits a much more larger emotional note for me. And obviously that may not be the case for you, and that's completely okay. You can still read it, it's still a good book, but it just hits more for me in like a way that, you know, those who know, those who don't know. But just seeing stuff that we can relate to always can make us feel closer to the books, and also feel like we aren't alone when you, like, you know, when you realize like someone you like doesn't like you back. And like, obviously you can get that from anything, but the way it's executed here is like, this hits my notes a little bit more, considering I've read for 2 of these books, I know these characters, and so it's all those personal bonds that can really heighten the emotion and experience that you feel when you encounter a scene like this. Reading it and getting into the world of Mimosa Confessions Volume 2, it's been a ride, and I really am excited to read Volume 3 when it comes out soon. And the best thing that Volume 3 can do is have a moment that I can relate to that happens in my life, because Volume 1, stuff happened in my life to make me relate to this, and in Volume 2, stuff happened during my life to make me relate to certain moments in here as well. And I can't tell if it's just really good timing on Hachimaku's end, or more like 7C's end, because they're the ones localizing and publishing these. Either way, it's really good coincidence timing, and it's made me appreciate these books on a whole lot more level than I really anticipated. It's always the right time. It's always the right time. The series that you remember fondly the most, they're the ones that always come at the right time, you know. This video isn't really meant to be like the whole, you should read this light novel thing. You have to read it because it's so good. I'm not really trying to convince that now. This video has mainly been a rant. I tried structuring this in a much better format. It turns out I made the video way more longer, and at this point, I'm not really interested in trying to convince you to read Mimosa Confessions. If you read this book and you feel like you might like it, then hey, maybe read it. But I'm not really trying to be like, this is volume 2, you know. You don't really get someone this series by telling them to read volume 2. No, you get them to read volume fucking 1 first, and then you get them to read volume 2. So that first video will always be like, you know, the whole get into the series. But now that I'm talking about volume 2, I don't really need to focus on proving a point in a sense. You'll prove a point like, heh, this is why this book series is good. You should read it. No, I'm just gonna talk about why I like the book series, and if you happen to if you happen to also align with it, then hey, you can also read it too. I just really on that point. Yeah, that's pretty much all I have to say about The Most Confessions Volume 2 right now. Well, this is really the first time I ever really talked about books. I usually talk about TV series, animes and such, and games. This is a new concept for me, so I'm not really, these things are long, and so it takes a lot more out of me, and I can't really mention everything. So I do apologize if I forgot about anything. If you have anything else that you want to personally talk about, because I know The Most Confession isn't that big. We only like 3 people here, but thank you for watching. If you reached this far somehow, this video is definitely gonna flop, but it's okay. It's okay. You know, I don't really care anymore. Purchase the book if you'd like. I really do. You really should purchase physically. The last worst thing we can get is when they discontinue this localization series, because the book series is finished in Japan. But yeah, that's all I gotta say right now. Thank you. This is Noodle, and I'm currently signing out for the night. Goodbye.